afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the next Cygnus Alpha Spearhead event. It gives me great pleasure to revisit a Jon Pertwee classic story. I love Jon Pertwee as Doctor Who. I loved him as Wurzel Gummidge, like we all did. But it's great to have Madhav, Sharma and Caroline Hunt, who both appeared in Frontier in Space. Round of applause. Yay! Woo! Yeah.
Hello, hello.
So, Caroline, if we may start with you. Well, we should really start with William Hartnell, because you appeared in a William Hartnell story, didn't you?
I did, yes. I can remember that quite clearly because it was my first job on television.
Wow! So it was your first job. So were you fresh out of drama school, or what was your background? I
was completely fresh out of drama school, and yes, it was my very first job ever, I think. It was done live.
So it was recorded live, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah. Yes. Which made it very exciting because you had to jump over camera cables and all sorts of things to get from one set to another.
I bet. And was it quite a pressured, because time was very pressurized, wasn't it, in the studios?
It was very exciting because we had a Hungarian director called Henrik Hirsch, who had previously had a really bad time in Hungary. Right. And I think had been in prison and had, for revolutionary activities, and had come out. And he was a feature film director. So I don't think he quite understood the constraints of putting on a rather small budget television series into a studio. So he introduced all sorts of things like a tumbril with horses in the studio, which caused a lot of mayhem because it just simply wasn't big enough for that sort of filming, really. And so we got a lot of cameras shooting other cameras, and a lot of booms in shot and all that sort of thing.
And it was obviously, Doctor Who was still in its infancy by this time you were doing it. What are your memories of William Hartnell?
He was very grumpy. It was his last ever episode, his last ever series, I should say. And he was quite, I think, fed up with it, quite honestly. I don't know. He was certainly not very easy to work with for someone as young as me. I think I was scared stiff of him, actually. What else? I don't know what I remember about him. He was very dignified and rather aloof, I think. Yeah.
And we're able to enjoy the story, but it's been animated. Have you seen the animation of yourself?
I don't think I have, no. I should think because they lost some bits in the middle, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So what they did, they did some animation, so cartoons of the missing episodes of that William Hartnell serial. So yeah.
But it was also Ronald Pickup, who was later to become a very well-known actor. It was his first episode too. It was his first job. So we were both, straight out of drama school, basically.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing your memories. So we're going to whiz forward now from the 60s to 1973, 4. And Madhav, if we go with you, so how did you get the job on Doctor Who?
Oh, I don't know. How do you ever get any job? I mean, I have no idea. May I just say, first of all, how nice it is to see Caroline after all these years. She probably won't remember me, but I remember her very well indeed. Very good actress too, if I may say so.
Oh, that's kind of you.
Not at all. And Maureen O'Brien, of course, was in the Doctor Who with you, wasn't she? Wasn't she one of the companions of Bill Hartnell?
She was, yes. Yes, she was.
Purvis, I think it was.
Yes.
Yes. Anyway, it's lovely to see you, Caroline.
Thank you.
Is this the first time you guys have seen each other since the 70s, since that Jon Pertwee story?
Yes, I think it is.
I think certainly. It is. Yes. Well, Caroline moves in much higher circles than I do.
I don't think so.
So you don't really remember how you got the job?
No, I mean, the usual thing. I think I went to see Barry Letts, who
Yeah.
was then producing it, and that was it, really. Like a normal audition. I can't remember where I went. I think I went to White City,
Mm-hmm.
the BBC TV centre, and he said, "Do you want to do this?" And I said, "Yeah, why not? Lovely. It sounds wonderful." Because I was a great Doctor Who fan, you see.
Mm-hmm.
I liked Bill Hartnell, but I particularly liked Patrick Troughton, who was the one who followed him. And so it was kind of it was a very nice experience for me to come in for Jon Pertwee, really.
Yeah. And what are your memories for both of you, really? The story features the last TV work and appearance of Roger Delgado. What are you?
Oh, what a nice man. I think it was his last appearance in Doctor Who, because he died quite soon after, if I remember.
That's right. Yeah.
In that car crash, didn't he? In Turkey or somewhere.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful man, Roger Delgado. Actually, it was a very happy experience. As far as I can remember, everybody was wonderful in it. There was Harold Goldblatt, and there was Carol Sagar, and Luann Peters, and Katie Manning, of course, was lovely.
Yep.
So we all had a jolly good time when I was there, anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And Barry Letts, you see, I had worked with Pauline Letts as well on radio. Maybe that's why Barry saw me. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
You know.
Caroline, do you remember a lot about Roger Delgado?
I don't remember, very strangely. I remember more about the first Doctor Who I did than the second one, the Jon Pertwee one.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't remember much about him. No, not really. I don't know why I can't, but I can't. Time's gone by since, of course.
Well, that's true. And to be fair, you had a lot more to do in the William Hartnell story than you did in the Jon Pertwee.
I did.
And if it's your first job out of drama school, you will always remember that first job more than you know 50 jobs down the line or whatever.
Yes, it probably wasn't 50, but yes.
I want to ask you both about, as Doctor Who fans, as we're all here together to speak to you both today, we sort of share this sort of romantic notion of BBC Television Centre in the 1970s. I'd just like to ask you both, what are your memories of BBC Television Centre from that time in the 60s and 70s? If we start with Madhav, please.
Well, I mean, I was brought up on the BBC anyway, you see, so I always thought of the BBC as auntie. And it was lovely to work there, because I also used to work in radio for them in Bush House, for the Overseas Service, and in Broadcasting House and so on. But there was something very family-like in those days, in the entire profession, which I miss nowadays. Now everyone's busy talking about mortgages and things. I don't know, and you never see them again. We all used to, it was a small enough profession then. There were not many of us around, I suppose, by comparison to today. And they were all very friendly. So we knew everybody from Sean Sutton down to, whoever was the floor manager on a particular time. So it varied a lot, but I have very, very fond memories there of TV Centre.
Thank you. Caroline?
Yes, I remember it very well. It was very exciting to go there. I was always very impressed by it, I think. The building itself, when you went into the great sort of atrium, really, I suppose, where you went and signed in, and then you got your key to the dressing room. And on the 5th or 6th floor, you got the canteen. Mm-hmm. And there was one actor that was well known for helping himself on his tray and then eating it almost all before he got to the payout. So he'd only have one thing to pay for. Because actors are always hungry, aren't they?
I'll have to remember that next time I go for food somewhere.
It's a good plan. But yes, you're right. It's true. We did have, I suppose, far more exposure to the production staff and the directors and the other actors in other things, because there was lots of things going on simultaneously there. So there were lots and lots of people that used to meet in the canteen. And so we also rehearsed properly, unlike they do now, where you just come on for the day and go. We got to know everyone. We used to eat meals together and have coffees together. And, there was sort of lots of chats going on. It was really good fun. It's true. Quite different to what happens now.
And I suppose it was really a place, a lot of people have said this, but you could go in and network and you could speak to someone and, you could be walking down the corridor and be like, oh yeah, are you working on anything at the moment? Oh yeah, come and do you want to do this? Do you want to do?
Very much so. And in the lift and everything, you'd meet people. It was fun. It was fun. And there was always people that knew you or you knew them. So that was lovely.
The Acton Hilton, it used to be called, that rehearsal place, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, the Acton Hilton. Yes.
And there was a pub round the corner where you could always find Jimmy Ellis and so on.
I want to ask you both about theatre, because you're both heavily involved in a history of theatre. You've done lots of theatre work. What are your thoughts about the current climate with theatre not being able to happen, or it is able to happen? What do you think the future of theatre is going to be? I'll start with Caroline, if I may.
I think it's very difficult to know. I know that I live in Bristol, and in Bristol they are experimenting with distance seating and opening, because to run a theatre is a very expensive thing. To keep just the building open is expensive, let alone running it. And they have had to lay off a lot of staff at the Bristol Old Vic and the tobacco factory and the Hippodrome too. And some of these theatres are too small a house to facilitate socially distanced audiences and make any living at all out of it. So I think a lot of theatres will go to the wall, I'm afraid. But I think they are also experimenting with doing performances outside and performances in the restaurant and things like that. That's what they're beginning to do now. And also, of course, there's theatres that are done on YouTube, that they're recording performances and showing them to audiences that way. But I think it's very unlikely that anyone's going to be able to do big productions again until at least next year, April or something like that. They might, depending on how the COVID goes.
Thank you. Madhav.
Well, you see, I think it's a wonderful opportunity for theatre at the moment, because we were getting a little staid and a little complacent, and the same things being done in the West End, for example. And when I think of people like Caroline, had a most innovative theatre company when she started quite early on, I remember. I think it's a wonderful chance now to reinvent theatre and what it means and exactly what it is we're offering the audiences. And I think it would be nice to see a lot more new work and new talent, and there's so much exciting stuff that is potentially possible. I think the big boys, the big theatres will survive no matter what. I mean, we all know that. The West End will either pay for itself or it will close down. The RSC and the National will no doubt get the bulk of the monies that are going. But the smaller companies are the people I worry about. And I think we need to rediscover that theatre is not like film. And I'm so tired of going to the theatre and seeing fantastic sets and beautiful effects. And maybe we need to get back to just the imagination and the empty space of Peter Brook. I do think it's a wonderful opportunity for young actors to reimagine everything.
I completely agree with you. I think it's very interesting if we can get back to younger work and more perhaps devised work, which I think they do in Bristol quite a lot, in a wonderful way, that they've reached a new young audience that is much, and so theatre is much more mobile, and it can go out to schools and halls and reach people that may not have theatre accessible to them. I agree with you. That is a great chance.
I'm going to bring somebody into the conversation now, and I'm sure he's been listening with intent. Mr. Andrew Stocker, who is very well known in Bristol. I think you must know him, Caroline.
Yeah, I
So
do.
Andrew, I'm just unmuting you. So what is your thoughts about theatre, Andrew, going forward?
Well, first of all, just say hello, Caroline. How are you? I hope you're keeping well. I've known Caroline for many, many years because Caroline's wonderful father was the first artistic director. He actually helped set up the Bristol Vic Company back in 1946. So I've known Caroline on and off for many, many years. But at the moment, the theatre, obviously at the Old Vic in Bristol, like Caroline's just said, we are experimenting. We're doing sort of where we have this new foyer, which has now exposed the original wall of the theatre. We have this dais, so we're putting on entertainment. We've had poetry, we've had classical music, and we have had a stand-up comedian doing a Zoom call with another 4 stand-up comedians. And we basically can house up to about 100 people, basically. And that seems to be working. So that's the first step towards a new way of entertainment. But we're very lucky we've got that space. But and also, they've now pedestrianised the whole of King Street, which is right outside the Bristol Vic Theatre. And we are looking forward to going out there into the street and sort of socially distancing. And it's working a new way and generating new work as well, which is very, very exciting.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Madhav, I need to ask you, I'm going to move away from Doctor Who. We haven't really spoken a lot about it, but EastEnders, my goodness, for me, I didn't realise until recently, you did 2 years in total on EastEnders quite recently. How did that come about, and what are your memories of it?
Well, I'll tell you, I thought no one's going to employ me anymore. I'm getting old, practically senile. I'm not your good-looking hero, you know, I mean, and all that was going through. The actors are always insecure about everything, and me more than most. I always think like everybody else does. But anyway, I was, my agent wanted me to go and see somebody about Holby City. And I said, oh, I'm not sure that I want to see it. And they sent me a script. And it was to play a Yorkshireman who was a pigeon fancier. And I said, they're never going to cast me in that these days. They'll find somebody from Yorkshire for a start. Then they'll find somebody preferably who's got pigeons, because that's the way the business seems to be going. And she said, no, you must go. I insist that you must go. So I made every excuse possible. And then I went up to this Holby City. Had a wonderful time there doing this part. But when I went for the audition, there was Dennis Lill there and other people far better for the role than I was. But to my great surprise, they wanted me to do it. So they sent a car all the way to Suffolk, where I live, and treated me like I was some big star or something. And I went back to Elstree, and I spent a few days there doing this Holby City. And what I didn't know was it was all being set up, because watching me all the time was John York, who was then the executive producer of EastEnders. And the whole thing was to see how I behaved with other people and how I got on with the crew, and whether I was a diva who was going to throw a fit about this or that, or whether I was just a ordinary person, which is what I am. And so I finished that. I went home, and the next day they rang and said, would you like to do EastEnders? And I said, only John would just like to meet you. And I said, yes. And I went again back to Elstree. They sent another car all the way to Suffolk to get me. and I went back there, and it was lovely. But the storylines for me in the 2 years went awry because the lady who played my wife fell ill rather badly. Right. So I was just stuck doing odd little bits here and there, and, you know, doing my best, doing a lot of smiling, as I recall. And I mean, but it was fun though. I mean, then Kate Oates came in, and then John Sen came in, and they're all very nice. They're a bit intense, you know. I mean, nowadays, none of the actors speak to any of the other actors. You're all in little bubbles, you know, and it's not COVID, it's before that. Yeah. So you feel a bit like you're in a factory sometimes.
Right. Because I remember 2 specific strong storylines from your time, one of which was you guys were foster parents. Yeah. And I really liked that idea of you having all those photos on the wall of all your foster children. That was really, really sweet. And then the other sort of storyline was that the one of your foster children was then having a relationship with one of your younger nieces, and your other niece was lesbian. The EastEnders has a lot of gritty, quite realistic kitchen sink drama. Is kitchen sink drama your preference for acting?
No, I wouldn't say that. I'm a very old-fashioned actor, you see. I do what I'm told as long as I get paid. And now and again, when the hubris hits me hard, I create my own work, and I go out and do my own stuff. So I kind of try, like we all do, you know. It's about survival at the end of the day. But I don't anymore have those highfalutin ideas I had that I could save the world by making everything political and, you know, and all that. By the way, Caroline must tell me, I seem to remember, was it your uncle, Caroline, who was the leader of the expedition to Everest when Hillary and Tenzing were the first people to climb it?
Yes, he was. Yes.
I thought so. Yes.
So Caroline, could you tell us that story? What happened there?
Well, I don't know, except he was in the army, I think, and then I can't remember exactly how he was asked to lead it, but he was I think he was a second choice, and also he had a heart condition, even though he was at that point quite a young man, which meant that he couldn't ever go to the top, or he couldn't risk it because the air's being very thin, and they were carrying an awful lot of kit, so everything they carried was very heavy. They was having string vests, and their boots, I mean, their crampons alone were huge and heavy, great big things. And they were carrying all these ropes and oxygen things. And quite honestly, now they can nip up in Lycra, can't they? And they can, I mean, I think Everest's been quite badly spoiled in some ways by the amount of climbers that have gone up there. Mm-hmm. And in those days, of course, they were much less reliant on, I mean, their communication, for instance. When they announced that they had conquered Everest, they deliberately delayed it to coincide with the coronation, because their journalist, who was called Jan Morris at the time, who then he was called John Morris and he became Jan Morris. He ran down Everest. He was a journalist and he wasn't a climber. And I think it was a very terrifying expedition for him. And they deliberately held the news back until they could announce it on Coronation Day, which is a bit of a kind of fix, but deliberately sort of to honour the new Queen, I suppose.
Caroline, I'm good. Before I open up questions to people Zooming with us all this afternoon, I want to ask you about your theatre stuff and about creating new things. Is that something that you really enjoy doing, that sort of new work?
Yes, very much so. I started a new writing company, quite a long time ago. I mean, now. It was one or two. There were very few in those days. And we worked we started off in the Belgrade in Coventry, and they had a studio. And then we were moved several times, but we did, it was very exciting. It was a small company of very good actors who were all kind of dedicated to doing new work and for very little pay. And they did some wonderful work together. I mean, not so much me as them. I mean, because a company is, you know, the strength of its members. And we had some very good writers. We had some very exciting writers at the time. And it was a very well funded by the Arts Council, which of course, has become far more difficult now. But there is a lot of exciting new writing going on, which is very, very good. And I do love it. I do love working with the writer to find out exactly what he's intending, which is, of course, I think the rule really is to try and do what the writer intended. Yeah, it was great.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, if you've got a question for either of our two guests, if you know how to use Zoom, raise your hand or just give a wave and I will come to you if you've got a question. Whilst people are thinking of questions, I want to ask you both, Do you remember the Draconians, the creatures from the Jon Pertwee story with the masks?
Oh yes, I remember them. And you remember Vera Fusek? Oh, do you remember her as the president? She was wonderful. I miss her so much. Haven't seen her for years.
I must actually say, Madhav, Vera was somebody who I did try to track down for this, and I contacted her son, who's a newspaper reporter for the Times, and unfortunately, she's now got very bad dementia and is in a care home. But he shared a story that, and he said, please share this during the chat, so that he, I'm not saying anything that's personal, but he said that he went on the set. He remembers meeting everybody, meeting Jon Pertwee, Roger Delgado, Katie Manning, and he remembered that Roger Delgado, between takes and during rehearsals, would always jokingly propose to his mum. So yeah, and I just thought it was lovely, and he said that he would, next time he goes to see her, he would say that how much Doctor Who fans remember her, because it was a very, Madhav, we were talking earlier about the political side of things, but Frontier of Space was a very political story, wasn't it? I don't know if you both remember the political aspect.
It was about promoting peace, really. It was about, my character was based on Tariq Ali, after the '68 shenanigans in Paris. So it was very idealistic in a way. I'm not sure that in the end it worked, because they mucked about with it all the time after we'd done it. They kept changing endings and changing the music and doing this and doing that. Producers, you know what the BBC's like. There's so many bloody committees that somebody somewhere doesn't like something, so it goes another way. But I mean, that's the way they work. But I have to say, though, it was one of the happiest experiences I had. And I'm sorry, I keep diverting this conversation slightly.
No, that's fine.
Only because, I was thinking Caroline Hunt, who's by nature a fairly modest person, as you can see, was one of the pioneers, in my view, not only about new writing, but she pioneered the physicality of actors, which is something that later people like Nancy Meckler and so on took on. I actually think Caroline Hunt has contributed more to this profession than many people know. And I want to pay my tribute to her.
That's too kind, but very sweet of you.
No, it's true, Caroline. I do think that. Your company was called CV8, wasn't it? Or
CV1, yes, it was. Yes.
CV1, yes, something like that. Yes, I'm sorry. But I just wanted to say that, because, in our business, we don't usually support each other and praise each other unless there's something to be had in return, or unless we're all of the same particular tribal cabal for that moment in either holiday, like on a production, or, it's a bit like a holiday romance, or politically, if you happen to be in a particular sector, maybe people support each other. And I think it's very important, particularly these days, that we start talking about the importance of the theatre for the soul, for the mind, and for change in society. And I mean, I love new writing. This doesn't mean I think we should never do Shakespeare again. I'd rather wish they'd do it slightly differently to the way the RSC does it sometimes, but that's neither here nor there. I mean, it's good that, I think good work is good work. It's about people, and that'll never be out of date. And I find some of the modern writing quite superb, I have to say. So thank you.
That's such a generous thing to say, because I think it is very generational theatre, and that's how it should be, I suppose. You get new people coming in. But it does mean that, of course, if you come from a generation back like me, no one knows anyone in your generation or what anyone did, which is very, as you say, it's important, I think, that people do inherit, the process is passed from generation to generation. So we all contribute in a way.
Yes, the baton needs to be passed on. But I think sometimes, when I was young anyway, and I'm sure this was the case when you were young, we used to kind of listen to older actors and listen to directors, and we were quite respectful of them. And the one good thing about today is, in a way, they question everything, which is marvelous. There's no subservience or anything like that. But on the other hand, there is this, sometimes I get a little tired of people reinventing the wheel, And you just think, well, yes, that's been done. You could move on a bit, you know. But it's hard because they mean so well. And the young need support, don't they?
Of course they do.
Yeah.
I do remember in Frontier of Space that the one thing I do remember quite clearly about it was that I was a very bad person in it, and I got blown up. And that was really interesting because that is the first time and the last that I ever got wired up in some sort of way, to be blown up on screen. And I'm pretty pleased with having that experience. I have to say, I don't think many people have been blown up on screen, so I'm pretty proud of that moment.
Does anybody have any questions at all? Raise your hand if you have. Don't worry if you haven't. It's not a problem. Oh yes, Lawrence. I'm going to come to Lawrence summary first of all. 1 second, Lawrence. You should be unmuted. Okay, Lawrence, if you want to start speaking, there we go.
Can't hear.
Working on Moonbase 3.
Sorry, working on Moonbase 3 for who?
For Madhav, sorry.
Yes.
Lawrence?
Madhav.
Madhav. What are your memories of working on Moonbase 3?
Yes, that was very nice too, because that had Jackie Pierce, I think, the one that I was in, and that was Darrell Blake, I think, who was directing that. Am I right? It was a kind of a spin-off.
Oh, sorry, Lawrence.
Some people saw it as a kind of spin-off from Doctor Who, but it wasn't really. I mean, it was in some respects because it was technological and so on. Sorry, Lawrence, I couldn't hear you at all. Did you say something?
Sorry, my sound went there. Yeah, yeah. Well, it was Barry Letts and Terence Sticks that were producing that, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Yeah,
it was, and that was a great show. But I remember something there that an older actor taught me a lesson during it, because I was doing something, and you know, we used to have a producer's run on the Friday, usually before we went into studio at Acton. And we did a run, and the director came to me with a very concerned look on his face, and he said, you know, I'm just worrying about your accent. You know, we did a run in the morning before the producers run in the afternoon. And he said after the morning run, I'm a bit worried. Can you give me a bit more of accent? And I said, yes, thank you. Yes, I will bear that in mind. And I said, what sort of accent? And he said, no, I don't mind. Just something that makes it accented and not RP. So I said, okay. And I went up to lunch to the Acton Hilton. I think it was Jeremy Kemp or somebody like that, an older actor whom I liked very much and whose work I liked very much anyway. And he turned around and he said, Madam, I'll give you a little tip. He said, I worked with so-and-so. He said, go back and do exactly what you did. But as soon as you finished, turn around and say, was that better? And I bet you he'll say yes. And I went back to the producer's run and I did exactly what Jeremy had told me to do. And the director bounded up to me and said, oh, that's much better. So that taught me something, that perception is all in the mind. Everything is to do with how you see things, isn't it? Nothing's either good or bad. Thinking makes it so, and all that sort of stuff. I mean, it really is extraordinary how we sometimes like to think, see, the thing we forget is the audiences. And for me, they're the most important part of it, even more important than your peers and even more important than your producers and all the people who make it possible by getting the money and all that. The people I care about most, if I'm totally honest, are the audience, because I think once you've been to the theatre as a child, there is a magic that happens that can never be replaced, because it stimulates the imagination, it makes you dream, it makes you wish, it makes you fantasize, and occasionally makes things happen because of that. And people have their lives so enriched. I mean, I just think that's worth fighting for. And that's why I think artists in general, and actors only one part of it, I mean, artists in general contribute to the nation far more than they are supposed to be. You know, they see us as frivolous little what they call them, flibbity-tibbits or whatever, you know, and we're not all of us. Sometimes we can play that too. We play the clown and we play the fool very well, I hope. But there are times when I think the arts give you something. And Doctor Who, for instance, you see, now there's a wild science fiction fantasy people used to think, but you look at some of the scripts. You know, I know Malcolm got some criticism for Frontier in Space, but actually look at the issues he deals with in it. I mean, there are ones you would be proud of today.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my opinion anyway, for what it's worth.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, Lawrence. Right, okay. We've got time for one last question. Ben Elliott, I'm going to come to you. I'll just unmute you 1 second. And you should be able to speak now if you want to just give it a go.
Hello there.
Hello.
I am a theater student across the pond in America. And I just wondered if you had any advice for actors during this pandemic. Any advice for what we should do to keep on aspiring to our craft?
Caroline, do you want to go first, or do you want...
I don't know. I think it's difficult, isn't it? It's difficult because our craft is so reliant on other people. I think one of the things I would do, but I tell you, this is a personal thing, because I'm not a very good sight reader. And if you can read, just keep reading aloud to either someone or yourself, and get that really fluent, I'm sure that that is a good practice for your art. And also, I suppose that networking is always important, isn't it? And I guess it's maybe being on any chat program that helps artists, and there are quite a few around. I don't know about over there in the States. I guess there must be. I mean, but we do have people that we can meet on and talk to online, and I guess that's really helpful, just to talk to other people who are going through, might be really isolated in difficult times. I don't know how you are there, how you feel.
You know, all right, given the circumstances.
Yeah, that's great. I think I should think of it. I don't know. Read plays. I guess see films. I guess it's all learning, isn't it? It's all putting into your craft. That would be me. I don't know. That's just me.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I agree with everything Caroline has said, because the most important thing there is never give up hope. I mean, we are such stuff as dreams are made on for a reason, I believe. Now, somebody else might believe there's another reason. And I think as long as you keep practicing your craft, and as long as you keep listening to other people, reading books, reading plays, seeing films, listening to music, looking at art, all these things help you because they help you imagine. Keep the imagination going all the time, and just don't lose hope, because sooner or later it'll all come right. It may not seem that way to you to begin with, because it depends on how you measure success. And you know, if you're not very rich and things, it's very difficult to survive, isn't it? I mean, I've never had any money, but I've survived all these years, and I survived largely because of the advice somebody gave me, which today nobody will take on board. And it was a girl I met in a dance hall in what used to be called a discotheque in my youth. I was dancing away, and this girl said, "What do you do?" And I said, "Oh, I'm an actor," rather grandly. I was working then in the books department of Whiteley's department store, which is in Queensway. And she said, "Oh, right, so what have I seen you in?" I said, "Oh, no, you haven't seen me in anything yet, but I've just come down from Southport," I said. And she said, "Oh, yeah, Southport, that's in Lancashire, isn't it?" And I said, yeah. And she said, "So when did you get back?" And I thought about it, and it was 6 months before. And she said, "Oh, well, then you're not an actor, are you? I mean, you're now working at Whiteley's, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes, you're quite right." And from that day, I decided that I would never do anything else. It's bizarre. I mean, it meant I relied on the generosity of others. I I'm afraid I was terrible. I was always borrowing money from people and not always paying them back on time and all that kind of stuff because I had nothing and nobody backing me, you see. I came to this country with £5 in my pocket and a dream to play Shakespeare. The point I'm trying to make is a stripper in Soho paid for my 3 guineas or whatever it was to audition at RADA. I mean, it's kind of, people are very generous if you give them the chance to be. And I think you just believe in yourself and do what you need to do and you'll be okay. Just trust in yourself, believe in yourself, to thine own self be true. I mean, that's the most important thing. Sorry, I'm going on a bit, but I feel very strongly that people like you should be encouraged. Do what you think is right for you. Just do it and it'll be okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll put you back on mute now, Ben. Thank you. Well, I'm afraid, ladies and gentlemen, time has beaten us. I'm going to unmute you all now, if I find the button, he says. There we go. And in traditional convention ways, let's show your appreciation to Madhav and Caroline for giving up their time. A round of applause. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, and see you all in a little while for where we'll be joined by Katie Manning and Tim Trelaw. Thanks, Madhav, and thank you, Caroline. Bye, everybody. See you later. Bye.
Bye everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.